All right, everybody. You know what that sounds mean. KBO Chats live. I'm Sam Pasco alongside Eric Holterman, and we are breaking down the entire KBO slate, the brand new slate of action here. Eric, how are you feeling right now? Not too many rainouts, and we have a great pitching staff on slate tonight. How you feeling?
Yeah, definitely excited to talk some KBO. It's good to have an excuse to turn the Phillies game off. We're losing 9-2 to the Orioles. It does not feel good to wait 10 months to watch your MLB team and have them get swept by the Orioles and lose games to the Marlins. Not too happy with my Phillies. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a bunch more Phillies in the KBO in a couple of years with the way things have been going. We're already overrepresented over there right now. But hey, good to not think about them for 45 minutes, whatever this is. So,
Well, like you said there, we do have some former Phillies, so maybe some decent memories will come back. Aaron Altair, he's okay. David Buchanan, he's okay. We'll dive into all that and more. Of course, comments are open if you have any questions. We have a question actually right here at the bottom. Which KBO pitcher will have the most strikeouts tonight? You can comment that below. We'll see what Eric's take is on that later. And dive into it all. So let's dive in right here. First up, we have the KT Wiz taking on the Doosan Bears. Beginning this excellent pitching slate, we have Despaigne taking on Alcantara. These two teams are trending in the wrong direction. Wiz on a 2-game losing streak, the Bears on a 1-game losing streak. But the Aces should be wild tonight. Both starters have been super impressive in their last 4. Eric, how do you feel about the Bears tonight? The Wiz, they give up a bunch of runs to the Wyverns, and now the Bears could probably do the same thing to them tonight.
yeah, this should be a great game. Like you said, both teams not playing their absolute best lately, but it's two of the better offenses in the league with two of the worst pitching staffs, but that problem should be solved in this one. Despaigne and Alcantara are both quite good, or at least quite good at times. As you mentioned, they've both been really good lately. Despaigne in his last 4 starts has a 1.82 ERA. Alcantara, it's been good for even longer than that. 11 straight quality starts for Alcantara, 2 or fewer earned runs in his last 7. It's a 1.37 ERA in his last 7 starts with a whip well under 1. So Alcantara, we've talked about him in the past. He's been one of the best pitchers in the league for it's now most of the year. He was pretty mediocre early. But given that he's looked like this for, it was 11 straight very good starts, 11 straight quality starts, I guess, to use the actual stat. Got to respect him. I think he can shut down the Wiz. Despaigne has been poor at times and great at other times. He's been more on lines of great these days. So I would expect 2 strong performances in this one.
Yeah, I mean, these pitchers have been great recently. When we take a look at the stats here on RotoWire.com, we can get that little spread there, something I learned about last show. You can see their stats from a certain period. But you mentioned the offenses here, and we see the Wiz ranked 4th right now in terms of runs per game, and the Bears even better than that, second in runs per game at almost 6. This Bears team put up 21 in games 1 and 2 against the Lions, and this Wiz team was lit up and really limited by the by the SK Wyverns. See that there, 6 runs, but before that, just 2. Do you worry about that Wiz offense not being able to keep pace with the Bears when you look at the way they played against the Wyverns?
Yeah, it's been an extended run where they haven't really had a great score. It looks like 7 straight games where they've scored no more than 6. They do have 6 in 3 of those. Nothing wrong with scoring 6 runs. But it's been a bit since they've really blown up. Mel Rojas is still Mel Rojas. Becco Gong hadn't been at his best for quite a while, but he's been decent for 10 games or so. He's been mostly back. So I still think there's definitely enough there, even if it's been slightly down for the last couple games. But I would expect him to stay down against Alcantara. I think Alcantara is probably better than the Wiz lineup is. At least he's been that way for quite some time now.
I like that. Let's see how that impacts the total here. Set at 9 right now. Bears are the favorite. Only a 10% chance of rain. Eric, who are you leaning towards here? Who's gonna win this interesting matchup here?
Yeah, low chance of rain all around the slate is the main thing to be excited about. I think we might get 3 straight full slates in a row, which is a real treat given the way things were for most of July. I think Alcantara is better than Despaigne, or at least more reliable. They're maybe similar when Despaigne is at his best, but I think Alcantara has been better for longer. On the whole, the Bears lineup is better than the Wiz, though not by a ton. So I'm going to side with the Bears, and I'm going to go under. Obviously, bullpens, you never know. It could be 1-0 when these guys leave the game in the 7th, and it could finish 8-7 or something, but I'm going to go Bears and under.
I like that there. Bears and under is the outlook for the Wiz Bears game. Moving over, we have the Twins taking on the Dinos. The Twins have been one of the hottest teams in the KBO. I believe they're 14-7 in their last 21 games. They've been on fire. Roberto Ramos, you don't even see him here in the lineup. You got to go all the way down here, and he hit a home run last night, so maybe he's taken a step forward. But don't forget with this Dinos team, their offense is also going. Aaron Altair, he doesn't have a game without a hit since he's returned from injury. And I think this could be a big offensive day when we look at the starting pitchers. Eric, how do you feel about Mike Wright of the Dinos tonight, holding it down for that team?
Yeah, I've said some negative things about Wright in the past. That was more when his ERA was quite low. I was trying to point out that he didn't deserve, an ERA under 3 like it had been for a while. But that ERA just over 4 seems pretty fair to him, and it's not a bad mark by any means. It's a solid mid-rotation starter. I think good enough for a foreign pitcher, even if they might wish that they had 2 Drew Rajinskis. He's above average strikeout rate, but slightly too many walks. Makes for a fine pitcher overall. Hasn't dominated lately, though he does have 2 straight quality starts. 3 earned runs, of course, and both of those aren't dominant. But 14 strikeouts and 1 walk over his last 2. So it's been a pretty good stretch for him. He doesn't face the easiest lineup against the Twins here. The Twins were quite hot for a while. They did lose 3 in a row to the Heroes and Tigers, but they did rebound by winning 2 straight. They've taken... It's 5 out of 9 against the Heroes and Tigers. They've had 2 series against the Tigers in a row. So that's pretty respectable against 2 playoff teams, or at least playoff contenders. So not the easiest for Wright, but I think he's a playable option here. Hyun-Sik Kim on the other side, 20-year-old rookie, 3rd overall pick in this year's draft. He's been mostly a reliever this year, and he's been mostly bad. Not walking a ton of guys, but that might just be because everybody's already hit his pitches by the time he gets the chance to throw a 4th ball. Not a lot of strikeouts, and just getting knocked around pretty hard in most of his outings. So I think given the strength of Dinos lineup, I think they should have a pretty easy time with him in this one.
Yeah, when we look at the earned runs, he's put up past 2 starts. You're looking at 9 total, a home run in each, and not big strikeout numbers, so I can't imagine he's someone you really want to be targeting on DraftKings. In terms of the offense, it seems like it's pretty obvious that we're going to get an over tonight. Who do you think is going to win here? Who's going to come out victorious? Because I could see this a 10-9 game, a 13-12 game, but I'm not sure who's actually going to win.
Yeah, I think there's a chance that it's the Wright can hold the Twins down, or at least hold them to 3-ish over the first 6 or 7 innings. That would be the path to the under, but I would side with the over just because I don't have any faith in Hyun-Sik Kim. I think pretty comfortable difference between the 2 pitchers in this one. I think Wright, even though he's not an ace, is a solid mid-rotation starter at worst, and Kim doesn't look like he belongs in a rotation yet. So I think it's pretty comfortable Dinos in this one. It's also worth noting the Dinos have maybe a good reliever now. They pulled off a trade. They traded a couple of small pieces, a bench infielder and a reliever who barely pitched, for another reliever who barely pitched, plus also Kyung-Chan Moon, who was the closer for the Tigers. He had a 1.31 ERA last year and a 5.25 ERA this year, which of course is why he got traded. But his underlying numbers are pretty good: 26 strikeouts in 24 innings against just 6 walks. But he's also been knocked around for home runs, 6 home runs already this season after allowing just 2 last year. But again, its reliever samples are tiny. The guy's thrown only 24 innings, assuming that he's suddenly way worse. He was an all-star closer last year, a great reliever. So it's a good pickup for the Dinos. A little bit strange that the Tigers, who are a competitive team, would drop a reliever who was that good that recently. But I think it's a big pickup for the Dinos. I don't know if it solves their biggest problem because their bullpen is really bad. So getting just one guy who hasn't even been that good this year necessarily doesn't solve everything. But it might be enough to take them from, the worst bullpen to third or fourth worst. And that's huge, given that that's by far their biggest hole.
Yeah, because you look at the team stats elsewhere, they're elite offensively. And even outside that bullpen, their pitching is still pretty solid. In terms of a change of scenery, you see a lot of teams just in baseball in general and sports overall wanting to just get a guy somewhere else and then he can turn on that all-star potential. In the KBO, though, it's a really small league and very local. I'm wondering how much of that scenery is actually changing for him because, 2 series, 3 games each week, and you're seeing a lot of teams, you're traveling a lot. Do you think he can return to that all-star form? Do you think that shifting, that change of scenery will be enough to really move that bullpen and be a difference maker, especially for this Dinos team that's really right there with the heroes?
Right. It might be the kind of thing where just hearing a voice of a different coach might help. I think that might be one of the big things about change of scenery. Maybe just the way your pitching coach is framing things to you wasn't working out, and you just hear similar things from somebody else, and it does. So I'm not sure, but I also am not necessarily that worried about what he's done this year. It seems just like every mistake he's made is getting punished. Again, it's 3 times as many homers as he gave up all of last year already, and we're only a little bit past the halfway point. So I think it's going to help. We'll see if the home run problem continues. It's not going to help much, but even his 5.25 ERA probably doesn't rank that poorly within the Dinos bullpen, so, given how bad they've been. So he doesn't have to be all the way back for him to be a helpful piece.
All right, that's fair. And you mentioned that horrible bullpen, but you are taking the Dinos tonight because of that slight edge.
Yeah, and I think maybe because of Kim more than anything. Again, the guy doesn't look like he belongs in a rotation yet. Rookie who just hasn't really accomplished anything of note so far. Obviously, long career ahead of him, and he was the 3rd overall pick, so there's probably some faith for him for the future, but he hasn't done anything yet. No reason to believe he's going to hold down the league's best offense. And it's an offense which is getting some guys back from injury too. Aaron Altair, Yuji Yang had missed a bit of time with minor injuries. So that'll be a big help. They'll be getting Minwoo Park back soon too. It seems like he's working his way back from an injury as well. Some of those injuries, I think, have been part of the Dinos' recent slump. So getting those guys back should help a lot.
Yes, for sure, because I was going to mention that the Dinos actually have the same record in their last 10 as the Hanwha Eagles. That is not something you want to be seeing right now. You can see the Dinos and Eagles right there in terms of that 4-6 last 10. Due to health is getting better, so hopefully they'll be back to that number 1 Dinos team, and I can wear my hat again. Of course, it's the biggest thing. I want to see them be that number 1 team and rep the merch there. So anyway, moving on, we got the SK Wyverns taking on the Kia Tigers, who DX here in the comments are saying they got hosed in that Dinos trade. But we got your guy, Drew Gagnon, your number 1 guy in the cheat sheet tonight, facing off against a very hot Wyverns team. Somehow, this team put up double-digit runs on back-to-back nights against the Wiz. Wiz don't have great pitching, but still impressive after all those L's and that tie against Hanwha. Why do you feel confident with Gagnon on the bump against a Wyverns team that's turning things around?
Yeah, it's actually Juan Carlos Blanco's cheat sheet tonight, but I would agree with his picks. I think he said Gagnon and Shihwan Zhang, who we'll get to later, are 2 good picks, and I'm right with him on that one. Gagnon has not been at his best lately, but he's still a good pitcher. He bounced back from a bad start with a good one against the Dinos, which definitely matters, even if the Dinos have been somewhat struggling lately. Part of the reason they're struggling is because guys like Gagnon have handled them just fine. Although his 11 strikeouts to 10 walks over his last 3 starts. Not exactly what you want to see, even though, again, 2 of those starts are pretty good. The walks have really been increasing over kind of an extended period. You see how many starts there is in a row with at least 2 and often 3 or 4. A minor worry, he now has more walks than average, but his strikeout rate is 22.2%. That's considerably more above average than his 9.0% walk rate is. So I'm still behind him as quite a good starter. There's maybe some good home run luck there too. I think he's only allowed 2 homers all year. And while you believe that has the ability to suppress them, generally pitchers can't completely avoid homers like that. But as you said, he's facing a Wyverns team that isn't as terrible as they were a few days ago. We'll see how they fare in this series. If I was coming out with the midweek power rankings, I think they'd be back up to 9th. The main reason they were 10th is because they were just not even competitive. They weren't just losing 8 in a row. They were uncompetitive in essentially all 8 of those games. But it's 3 wins from 4, including 2 wins against a Wiz team that I think has generally been quite good, and they beat them pretty comfortably. Obviously, there's not a ton about scoring off the Wiz pitching. That's not all that exciting. A lot of people do that. But they weren't scoring off anybody, including, just 1 run in 2 in a row games against Wiz in the middle of that losing streak. So I'm definitely not thinking of them as, a terrible team anymore. But even if they're back to what they used to be wasn't good.
Yeah, the Wyverns, hopefully turning things around for them. It's great to see more teams competitive in the KBO. But in terms of offense tonight, we said the Wyverns maybe finding that juice. Yes, it was against the KT Wiz. And the Tigers have a great pitching staff, but I don't know if the Kia Tigers offense can really keep pace. Barry here noting that, Kia offense continues to be a struggle. They're having trouble getting run support. Even if Gagnon goes 7 innings, allows 3-4 runs, can the Tigers score that?
Yeah, and Sungwon Moon is a legitimate challenge on the mound for him. He's been one of the better pitchers for most of the year. He's allowed 3 or fewer earned runs in 11 of his last 12 starts, though he's been more mediocre over the last 2. Not getting knocked. One of them he got knocked around in his last start. He only allowed 2 runs, but he only struck out 1. So he hasn't been all that intimidating lately. But still, it's for an extended stretch of the season. He's been quite good. He had an ERA under 4 last year as well. Overall, strong strikeout and walk numbers backing up his ERA and WHIP. Just maybe a minor concern that he hasn't struck out more than 4 in any of his last 5 starts. So it doesn't seem like he's pitching his best at the moment. But he's been pitching all right. And he's got a shot to bounce back against the Tigers team that's, I believe, still 8th in scoring and hasn't really been picking that up lately. So I think the over is the most, the easiest to pick part of this matchup. I'm sorry, not the over, the under. Kind of a key difference between those 2.
Especially a big one when this Tigers team doesn't even average 5 runs a game. They're 8th, like you said, in scoring. So you like the under here. And yeah, I forgot to mention Moon being a solid starter for the Wyverns. So you'd have to think if there would be any chance now for them to continue their hot streak, it would be with him on the mound. Do you think they can tonight? Will they be able to beat the Tigers, or is Gagnon going to be too much for them?
I am still going to side Tigers, but not by very much, given the difference between the 2 records. You might expect it to be a pretty comfortable win. I don't think it is. It's 2 pitchers that have been quite good for most of the year, that have been slightly worse lately, but will have a good chance to bounce back given the weakness of these lineups. Tigers have scored 3 or fewer in 4 of their last 5 games. The Wyverns in their last couple have been good, but there was an extended stretch where they were lucky to even score 2. So I think both pitchers would be strong plays tonight, given the offenses that they're facing.
I like that there. Wyverns, Tigers. First pitch, 5:30 a.m. Eastern. Moving down here on RotoWire.com. we see the Heroes taking on the Giants. We got some comments here. Before we actually get to the Heroes and Giants, we have a question here about Deuce and KT. We did indeed cover them, so you can watch the replay. But Eric, for one of our comments here, you want to just quickly recap, give a quick little summary on what we thought and what we said about this KT Wiz Deuce and Bears matchup.
Yeah, great game. Two of the better lineups in the league, two of the better pitchers. Alcantara has been very good for a very long time. Despaigne has been pretty good for a while, pretty good for most of the year, but occasionally quite bad. I think commenter noted that he's had a couple bad starts against the Bears specifically. Given the way he's pitching lately, I think he's got a shot to do well against them, but I think Alcantara is better than he is, so I would side with the Bears on this one. But I do think that the two pitchers, the good pitchers, are going to beat the good hitters, and I think we'll see a low total overall, unless, of course, we see 8 runs off the bullpen in the last couple innings.
Yes, that bullpen, of course, in the KBO, always unpredictable. So hope you enjoyed that one, little summary right there. So moving on, Kiwoom Heroes taking on the Lotte Giants. The Giants, they're hot. They've been hot. They lost last night, but they don't have Dan Straley going, but they have maybe something kind of close in terms of recent success. But I don't think the Giants will be able to continue that momentum. They're facing the Heroes and Addison Russell, who's been quite strong. Eric, what do you think about this series? Can the Giants continue their momentum, bounce back from last night, and continue that stretch? Or the Heroes, they're going to show you why they're number one come power rankings on Monday?
Yeah, it's definitely a good time for the Giants to be playing a team this good. They've maybe fallen off from their really excellent run where they were consistently scoring 8 runs a game, though they did score 8 in one of the 2 against the Giants. Sewung Park, you said he's kind of close to Straley. I mean, he's about as close as Giant starters get. It's a pretty big gap. A 4.03 ERA in his last 7 games is the way of saying that he's done well lately. And when that's the good stretch, it's pretty mediocre. Though his strikeout and walk numbers on the season as a whole are both basically right at league average. He's given up a few too many homers. He had a respectable ERA last year, I think low to mid 4s. So I think there's reason to believe he's a fine starter, even though his ERA is above 5. Not sure fine will be good enough against this Heroes team. They've gone 11-3 over the last 14. They charged into first place in my power rankings over the weekend. Decent chance they're there again. That lineup definitely is even better with the return of Addison Russell. He really burst out of the gate, and then he had a couple bad games. But he still has just had so few total games that like 2 hitless games in a row looks real bad, even though, or I guess it's 3 hitless games in a row. Wouldn't really worry about that too much. Again, expected him to maybe have some troubles adjusting to a new league, a new country in the middle of a pandemic. He missed a couple games. I think they call it fatigue. Then he came back and didn't look great. But given that he just is coming off a 2-hit contest, and in his previous 2, he at least gotten on base 3 times with walks. I'm not worried about him. I'd be very happy to play him. Unfortunately, he's now priced correctly. His first couple games, he cost the same as a guy who hadn't played it all this year, even though obviously the reason he hadn't played it all this year is because he wasn't on the team. But he really extends that top half of that lineup. It's just the top 5 that I'm excited about these days, not top 6, because their catcher, Dongwon Park, who's been one of the best hitting catchers all year, is out with a back issue. But really, any of those top 5 are playable most of the time, and I think they're playable tonight against Park, who, again, even when he's good, he's merely average.
Yeah, Park, I said that because of his last start against Kiwoom, where he actually had one of his better starts, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts, and he has 2 wins in 2 of his last 3 starts, so definitely not the real Straley level, but in terms of this Giants team, they're going to need for him to be that, and he's proven he can kind of get there, not quite in terms of getting deep into games, but somewhat closest you can expect from this Giants team. But in terms of offense, Addison Russell, I was a little concerned when I saw him go 0 for 2 in 2 games against the Hanwha Eagles. Do you have him as a guy you would build your lineup around? You mentioned he's priced appropriately now. Do you pay up for him, or do you expect look for value elsewhere in that lineup?
I'd be happy to pay for him. I think he's not overpriced, and I think stacking the heroes has been a good idea most of the time lately, especially because they've got a couple lefties and a couple righties at the top, so there's almost always a set of heroes that's worth looking into. Jungkook Lee is the most exciting guy, the 21-year-old outfielder. Hit for a ton of average his first 3 years, and then this year he suddenly added power. He never hit more than 6 homers in his first 3 seasons, but he already has 13 this year. Not elite power, but average power, joining elite contact, sort of to a lesser scale, the transition that like a Christian Yelich has made. Obviously not saying this guy is Christian Yelich or even necessarily the Yelich of the KBO just yet, but when you take a guy who you have no doubts about his ability to hit for contact, and then he starts learning how to hit it out of the park too, I think you can get really excited about his development, and he's been on a tear lately, so he's the most exciting hero for me almost all the time. But I don't mind pairing him with an Addison Russell or a Ha-Seong Kim, who's now, I guess, the third baseman now that Russell's the shortstop. That stretch there is pretty much all of them are worth a look pretty much all the time.
Yeah, when you look at Lee's recent success, going back to this month, I think there's not a single game where he doesn't have at least one hit, a couple multi-hit games in there. You mentioned the power, only 1 home run this month, but when you look at that hit streak, it keeps going. I mean, I don't know when this guy doesn't get a hit. So I like this Heroes lineup, and I'm going to guess you're going to take them as the straight-up winner tonight.
Yeah, we haven't talked about Shihwan Zhang yet, but we probably don't need to. It looks like he's just going to be an opener. I don't think he's pitched more than a couple innings in any start or any outing this year. Doesn't seem to be any indication they're going to try to make him a starter in this one. Ordinarily, you'd say opener means KBO bullpens for 9 innings, but the Heroes have generally had a pretty good one. So there's definitely a pathway. Again, the Giants getting to face a bunch of relievers all game. They could definitely get there, especially since they've hit the ball better of late. But I think the Heroes just have much more talent in that lineup. So even the Giants playing their best, I think, have to be the underdogs in this one.
In terms of the total, I saw Dixon Machado on a cheat sheet, I believe, 2 days ago. He's actually kind of heating up recently, still batting a little low in this lineup. How do you feel about the Giants being able to push this game to an over?
Yeah, I think there's a good shot there. Again, I'm less scared maybe of a bullpen game with the Heroes and with other teams, but it's still a bullpen game. If they had a starter they trusted to go tonight, they would be. So I think, yeah, we got Sewon Park, who at best is average, and we've got a bullpen game on the other side. We've got a very strong Heroes lineup and a pretty hot Giants lineup. I think that all adds up to an over, even though the line does seem to be pretty high.
Got the over there, and you can see right here on RotoWire.com the consensus line, 11 runs right now, and 0% chance of rain. Talked about that earlier. Great thing to see. You're happy about it. I am too. That's great to see some action, some non-rain out action. Wrapping up now, we got the Samsung Lions against the Hanwha Eagles. Thankfully, we saved the Eagles for last. Biggest thing with this game, I see the Eagles, I say no way. And I see David Buchanan, my guy, who's been untouchable when he's on. But when he's off, he's horrible, like 8 runs a couple times. I feel this is just a Buchanan game. If he's on, it's an easy win for the Lions. If he's not, maybe the Eagles show that 4-6 record and maybe get a little higher in their last 10.
Yeah, though the fact that he's facing the Eagles doesn't guarantee that he'll be on. One of his 8-run blowups this year was against these Eagles in late June. So never know which Buchanan's going to show up. I'm going to assume he's going to be good, which means he'll allow 8. Both these teams have been really bad lately. Both have 4 wins in their last 17. For the Eagles, I think it's actually 4 in their last 19. Not good on the Lions' part when they're playing as bad as the Eagles. 2 pretty interesting pitchers, though. Buchanan coming off a pair of one mediocre and one bad start, but then threw 7 scoreless innings in his last start. Was against the Wyverns, though, so I don't know how much credit you give him there. But still, over his last 7, it's 3.09 ERA, even with those poor starts included. On the whole, his underlying numbers don't necessarily impress, though mostly it's just that his strikeout rate's pretty mediocre. Everything else is fine. So at worst, he seems to be a mid-rotation guy, and when he's on, which he usually is, again, it's a pretty weird distribution to get to that ERA. He's allowed 8 or more runs 3 times, and he's allowed 2 or fewer, looks like 11 times. What he hasn't done yet is allow exactly 3 earned runs, which is extremely odd. He's got a 10, 2 8s, a 5, and a 4, and everything else is 2 or less. So he's either very good or terrible. On the opposite side, Shihwan Zhang is somebody I've really been interested in lately, especially for fantasy purposes, because he's the kind of guy that is more exciting in fantasy than otherwise because he's very much strikeout heavy. He's what's the strikeout rate? 23.7% is very high for a KBO starter, but his 12.4% walk rate is also very high, which means he's got the potential to allow a big number at any time if he just loads the bases and starts walking guys in. But he's been really quite good for an extended period. 2 straight scoreless starts, 2 or fewer earned runs in 8 of his last 9. That bad start you can see against the Wyverns in late June is his only bad start in his last 9. It's a 2.44 ERA and a 1.16 WHIP over his last 9 starts. That's better than Buchanan, I think, over that same stretch. So I think there's a good case for actually picking the Eagles in this one. It feels weird to do, but given how bad the Lions have been lately, again, they've been just as bad as the Eagles. And given that I think Zhang is actually pretty much close to as good as Buchanan, it should be a pitcher's duel, especially because the Lions are away in this one. We're not playing at the most hitter-friendly park in the league. It's 2 pretty weak lineups. Lions don't have Daniel Palka, their new foreign hitter, just yet. Brandon Barnes for the Eagles hasn't done a ton so far. It's far too early to write him off, but he hasn't looked like a star. He's walking a lot and has some power, but pretty low average. And I guess some of that might be a minor hamstring issue. So not a lot or anything from their foreign hitters, not enough from their local hitters, and 2 pretty good pitchers. So I think I'd go under, even though it's a pretty low under. And I am actually going to slightly side with the Eagles because I think Zhang has been more consistently good than Buchanan.
Wow, I don't think I've ever heard you say to pick the Eagles here. Normally, we always pick the team against the Eagles, but hey, maybe you broke it down pretty well. Sean recognizes that as well. Thank you guys for commenting and having some engagement. Eagles, though, I like the under, and I like Barnes. I keep going back to that historical thing. They have not been good all year. And I think they just reached past 20 wins this week. They just had their 21st, not that long ago. Are you really confident that they can pull out the victory over Buchanan, or is this more of a 50-50 game that you're not as confident in?
It's very close. Last time these 2 played, they did split. They each won 1 back in the end of July. Looks like they've taken 1 or 2 more off the Lions, just 1 more. So it's been close. And again, the Lions they've been as bad as the Eagles for the last 17 games. So I don't think there's a lot of reason to assume that the Lions should be favored, even if the pitchers were equal. And I do actually think Zhang has been more reliably good lately. That Lions offense, they've scored 3 or fewer runs in 6 of their last 7 games. The Eagles have scored 3 or fewer in 4 of their last 5. So again, I think the under is definitely the strongest play here, but I think Zhang, I think he might be enough here.
Yeah, when you look at those strikeout numbers, they're impressive. You can see here 23 Ks in his last 23 and 2/3 innings. That That is impressive, especially considering when he's on Hanwha. And I didn't think we'd be saying this when we look at the entire slate today. But hey, the Eagles and the Wyverns have some pretty decent pitchers going tonight. Not something we can say very often, but we'll see how they fare. Eagles definitely in a little better situation facing off against the Lions compared to the Wyverns against the Tigers. But that's all 5 series. Eric, let's hear your top 3 picks that you're most confident in tonight.
So I think the Dinos over Twins stands out above the rest by a lot. Dinos just have a better lineup than anybody, and they're facing a rookie pitcher who's accomplished essentially nothing in the KBO so far. So that's by far the biggest one. Trying to think which come closest for second. I think Bears over Wiz. I think I'm going to go there with the second one, just because that's almost purely based on more or less complete faith in Raul Alcantara based on how good he's been for so long. Definitely a pathway for Odrisamer Despaigne to outpitch him. He's been quite good at times, but I think I'm going to go with that as number 2. Could go with one of these over-unders as the third one, though usually the ones that I would pick the unders on are already quite low. I think I'll go under in that Lions-Eagles game as the third pick, just because, again, both of those, if you look at their recent performance, they'd hit that under against an average pitcher, and I think it's 2 strong pitchers. So I think I'll go that number 3. Heroes would have been 3 if it wasn't a bullpen game. I just feel tough saying I have a ton of confidence in a bullpen game, even though the pitcher they're facing is unremarkable at best.
So you got the Heroes as an option. Can we get a 5th pick? Another option if someone maybe doesn't believe in Mike Wright as much.
5th one, go with the under in that Wyverns Tigers. So again, 2 strong pitchers there against 2 weak lineups. With the caveat that both Moon and Gagnon aren't in their best stretches of late, though they haven't been terrible.
Yeah, it should be interesting. Not normally do we see 2 pitchers with a sub-4 ERA in the little box score we have here on RotoWire.com. So good things to come hopefully with that under. And that's just about it. That's all we got. Any injury notes we should be aware of tonight that would impact the stack or a game? We pretty much covered it all, but is there anything especially notable?
Yeah, the Dinos getting a couple guys back was the main thing in the past few days. Aaron Altair and Yuji Young have returned since we last talked, and Minwoo Park should be back soon. Doesn't seem like he's necessarily back tonight. Jaewon Kim had a minor injury for the Bears, but he's been back, though they are now without Kyungmin Hee, who had that really long hitting streak. Then followed that up. It was like a 25-plus game hitting streak. He followed that up with 5 straight hitless games, and then 1 good game, and now an injury. I don't think he hit the injured list, though, so it's possible he plays tonight, but I wouldn't have confidence in starting him. Wouldn't necessarily start him anyway against Odrisamer and Despaigne, though.
All right. That's all we got. Be sure to check us out on Twitter at RotoWire KBO. Thanks, guys, for tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for coming, everybody.